In this segment, to begin our consideration of historiography, we're going to consider what is probably the most influential account of the settlement of the West, the Frontier Thesis of Frederick Jackson Turner. Turner was a historian and professor at the University of Wisconsin, and his ideas have significantly influenced our understanding of American expansion and character. In 1893, Turner presented a paper titled "The Significance of the Frontier in American History." This work came on the heels of an 1890 report from the Census Bureau declaring the American frontier closed. To comprehend this, let's consider the census itself, an event mandated by the Constitution to count every resident in the United States every 10 years for legislative representation. Let's look at a map of the census in the U.S. during the 19th century. In 1870, settled areas are marked in green, while the vast unsettled regions represent the frontier. By 1880, settlement had expanded, turning more of the map orange, and by 1890 the frontier had shrunk further, leading to the Census Bureau's conclusion that a distinct frontier line no longer existed. Turner's narrative of U.S. history was one of leaving behind decadent civilization to begin anew on a pristine frontier. The settlement of America had been accomplished by people fleeing European civilization. He equated civilization with decadence. Turner argued that the frontier had been central to shaping American democracy and values. He posited that the challenges of frontier life fostered traits like individualism and self-reliance, traits that became hallmarks of the American identity. As parts of the United States became more settled, they too became decadent. What had kept the American spirit alive was the existence of the frontier. According to Turner, settlers moving westward were not just expanding geographically. They were escaping the constraints of European society. They sought to build anew in the wilderness, thus continually rejuvenating American ideals and staving off the decay they associated with Europe. However, with the official closing of the frontier, Turner suggested that America had entered a new phase. Without new lands to conquer, he feared the loss of the nation's pioneering spirit. Yet, as history unfolded, America redirected its expansionist energies overseas and into other domains such as science and technology, culminating in the space race. Turner's thesis is not without its critics, but it remains a cornerstone in understanding the narrative of American progress. It reflects a belief in the transformative power of the frontier, seen as a crucible for American democracy and identity. This perspective is vividly illustrated in the artwork titled American Progress, which we revisit for its depiction of the American ethos. The painting contrasts the enlightened, industrious East against the untamed, dark West. This visual metaphor captures an era's belief in the transformative power of American civilization. Industries, despite their environmental toll, were seen through a utopian lens, akin to the futuristic promise of Star Trek to modern audiences. They symbolized innovation, progress, and the American way. As American civilization advances, it encounters the native inhabitants and wildlife of the West, who are depicted as retreating before the inexorable march of progress. This portrayal reflects a prevailing sentiment of the time, that the displacement or assimilation of indigenous peoples and the conquest of the wilderness were necessary, even noble, components of the nation's expansionary project. Turner's thesis, thus, encapsulates a broader cultural belief in the righteousness of spreading enlightenment and civilization across the continent. Understanding the concept of ontology, our foundational understanding of what is universally acknowledged as true, even without conscious recognition, is essential in contextualizing Turner's thesis. One historian defines ontology as an implicit understanding of the world and its inhabitants. Implicit means implied or unstated. It arises from the culture and shapes common knowledge. How do you know something is true? Well, everyone knows that. To the Americans of Turner's era, the westward expansion was not just a policy or a series of events. It was an ontological truth, a core element of their identity and worldview. This expansion was seen as a heroic endeavor, a testament to the American spirit and its mission to extend liberty and civilization. This belief was deeply intertwined with the American sense of mission, a conviction that the United States was destined to lead the world in the quest for freedom and progress. Such notions were internalized by Americans well into the 20th century, shaping the national consciousness and guiding its policies and self-image. For Americans, this was all common sense. The dialogue around ontology also invites reflection on how societies challenge and redefine their fundamental truths. Thomas Paine's common sense, for instance, contested the then ontological belief in the necessity of monarchy for governance. By advocating for self-rule, Paine disrupted the established norms, illustrating how ontological beliefs can evolve. In Turner's work, we find not a challenge to the prevailing ontology, but an affirmation of it. His analysis of westward expansion underscores a period when American identity and destiny were inextricably linked to the notion of progress. Through Turner's lens, the settlement of the West becomes a microcosm of America's broader quest for advancement and enlightenment, a narrative deeply embedded in the nation's historical consciousness. What is overlooked in this ontology is some of the less positive aspects of American expansion: cultural displacement, genocide, and environmental destruction, for example. We will consider some of these in the next segment. Please proceed to answer the questions in the assignment on Canvas. If you have any questions, you can post them in the open forum discussion or contact the professor using Canvas email.